So a big welcome to everyone. Nice to be here. Oops. Still taking care of some technology. Maybe thumbs up for the people on Zoom if you can hear me okay. Great. Good, so we'll get started in just a few seconds. I'm pasting in the chat a document, the refuges and precepts, which we'll do later in the evening. And for those of you here in the room, we'll pass out the chant books a little bit later, so we can do that together before we end. And even before introducing the Buddhist studies, I thought it might be nice just to sit together for about 25 minutes. So make sure whether you're at home on Zoom or here in the room that you have what you need to sit comfortably. Like we actually belong here in this moment, in this body. And as hopefully you know, the course this summer is a study of the Buddhist teachings on Sila, this beautiful moral sensitivity. And of course, hopefully we sense how it really begins with this primary relationship in our lives, how we're relating to this life right here, this body, this conditioned mind that we have. How are we relating in a beautiful, kind, tender-hearted way, in a domineering, judgmental way? I'm sure some of you know and have studied some of Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, this wonderful Dharma teacher who passed away earlier this, maybe it was late winter, so just recently. But he had a way of languaging the Buddhist teachings that it's almost like a calling upon the heart's moral sensitivity, this not so much a should, like I should be nice to myself, but it's more of a calling upon this potential for real, actual compassion and wisdom, the heart that cares. Because this way of relating, this way of showing up actually works. It's what we say in Buddhist practice, we say it's onward leading. But it isn't that we do it, it's more that we uncover or discover this potential. Like right now, to be with this body, this experience of sitting, this experience of hearing and feeling whatever it is that the heart is sensitive to right now. Can we uncover a way of relating that has a lot of sensitivity and integrity and tenderness, this deep, resonant wish to not cause harm, if at all possible, not to add to the stress that's already maybe here. And if possible, to alleviate what stress can be alleviated. And even if we don't have a clue about how to take care of ourselves right now, we can just be sensitive in the sense of how I am relating to the moment. if it's helpful or not, if it's a cause for more stress or a cause for more release. So in terms of the practice of Sila, moral integrity, or just a moral sensitivity, we can discover during the sit this evening, discover how to listen to the heart that's sensitive around this value of not causing harm, not adding stress to myself, to others, to both. And that deep valuing of non-harming supports a greater sensitivity and responsivity. It's very alive, it's very moment by moment, finding our way, how to take care of this life and all lives, what helps, what doesn't help, never being perfectly clear. There's always this necessary element of humility, which is really just another way of saying a willingness to listen, a willingness to be sensitive. And in this simple way, we can build confidence in being a morally sensitive human being. A human being that's not just unafraid to be sensitive, morally sensitive, but hopefully eventually finds it really enlivening. Enlivened by the responsibility to care, to take care. And it's never theoretical, it's always moment by moment. So let's continue for a while in silence, just finding our own way, learning through trial and error how to take care of this heart, how to take care of this world in the most direct and simple way. Connecting with each moment, relating to each moment in ways that contribute to ease and well-being, in ways that don't contribute to being ill at ease. one of the first things we notice is we can't really take care of this life when the mind is distracted. And we can't take care of the world, and we can't take care of our friends when the mind is distracted. So you might even notice a little appropriate moral regret when we notice that we've been distracted, lost in thought. Almost as if we were to say to ourselves, "Oh, please forgive me, honey. I spaced out. I wasn't really able to be there for you. And I'm sorry. And I resolve to do better, to not forget, to be present so I can take care of this life. I can feel into the depth and the breadth of the moment. And in this way, find my way, planting seeds for ease and release, and avoiding planting those seeds that lead to stress and being ill at ease for myself and others, contributing to more suffering in the world. So I resolve to be present because I care about this life, and by extension I care about everybody, every life, because I know what it's like to feel burdened and pushed around by life, by experience, and oppressed by difficulties. And I do not want to contribute to more of that pain. And this kind of internal sense, or even dialogue at times, is establishing that valuing of moral integrity, moral sensitivity, that beautiful uprightness of the heart that cares. I'm not afraid of taking responsibility as best I can to care for this life, which is really saying that it doesn't really make sense to be forgetful, to space out, to think it doesn't matter, because it does. It really matters how the heart, mind, whatever is showing up and relating. Some ways of relating are stressful, and other ways of relating are really wholesome and conducive to more ease and a deeper sense of safety. And all of this can be discovered, but only if we're paying attention to the present moment. And for the purposes of this sit, you can even aspire to be directly aware, sensitive of the heart that feels, so that we'll have a clearer sense of when the way the mind is relating, the way the mind's showing up is not helpful. We might have that more direct sense of things getting tight and heavy in the heart. And when the mind is relating in skillful ways with kindness, with interest, with a continuity of awareness, we might notice a greater sense of wholesomeness and ease. So we're learning to rely on the sensitivity of the heart. And every moment, whether or not we're aware, in every moment how the mind is relating matters, in the sense of leaving an impression on the heart or setting something in motion. And that sense of responsibility may initially feel overwhelming, but hopefully it also evokes a sense of possibilities, of like actually taking responsibility, learning how to be relating in more and more moments in a skillful way that sets in motion happiness and ease and a deepening of wisdom, more and more release. Moral sensitivity is a very real sense of not being helpless. That the heart is capable of planting good seeds that will bring about good results right now, in any moment. And of course, the opposite is true. Right now, the mind is capable of relating in an unwholesome way that would plant seeds of stressfulness. And of course, when we hear that, we often want to go right to, let me do this right, because I don't want to make a mistake. And the mind starts to get dominating and controlling and afraid of doing the wrong thing. And then hopefully we discover this is not the way. This is the way toward more stress. So instead, we rely on the sensitivity of the heart. Being morally wise is a natural process. Restraining ourselves from saying something or thinking something that's not helpful, that arises as nature. We may interpret it as me refraining from doing that or saying that. But it actually happens naturally as a process when the mind or the heart is really sensitive. Oh yeah, this isn't helpful. I'm going to pause. I'm going to refrain from acting on this. I'm just going to feel what it feels like to want to say this or think that or react in this way. I'll just feel what that feels like. Something is being felt. It's like this now. And we'll have a few more minutes of silence, and we're just doing our best to harmonize with the conditions as they are for us, here in the body, and the sensitive heart, and the thinking mind. Sort of being present, if possible, without planting seeds for conflict. So take a moment and stretch, and Robin Major, our office manager, is here tonight, and they'll turn the screen on so the people on Zoom can both see the people here in the room, about 30 people in the room, and about 100 people on Zoom. And we can just, for some time, we'll have the big screen here tonight, but probably not for the future weeks, but just to give the people in the room a sense of the Zoom community and vice versa. And I've spotlighted myself because we're streaming live on our YouTube channel, but you can always, on your computer or device, you can choose the gallery view for those of you online. For those in the room, you don't have that choice. Great. Thanks, Robin. So welcome, everyone. So great to be able to gather like this, and really great that we're going to figure out how, once again, how to create community. So we're gathering around these teachings that, even though they came about some 2,500 years ago, I personally, and I think a lot of us, find them just really pragmatic and useful, even though they arose in a different culture, obviously a long, long time ago. They seem to still illuminate the actual quality of or experience of this mind in ways that support a deepening of wisdom and compassion. And I'm personally really grateful for that, and I'm also grateful that I get to do it with other people. And that's what we're doing, trying to make them real, really applicable, useful in our own lives, and to learn from each other. So there's some aspects of the Buddhist studies that I always like on the first night just to review. So this is a program for people who have a regular practice. It doesn't mean you're going to sit every day, but you should be aspiring to want to sit every day, even if it's, a busy day, just a few minutes. That it's really, we're sensing this desire for this to get to the top, this practice to get to the top of the priority list. Like even those of you who are raising kids, you gotta make dinner, you gotta take care of the kids, but actually the intention to be present can even trump that, because it will help. It's probably not that possible to be a good lover, a good parent, a good citizen, a good whatever, if we're just operating on autopilot. And this is especially true with this summer course on Sila, which is the Pali word for this moral sensitivity, moral integrity, the natural joy and lightness and freedom from remorse that can arise. The more we trust that heart, this heart, that is actually naturally, when we're noticing, sensitive. Like we might think it's a problem, like we do something that was a little off. Like I noticed I said something to my partner earlier today. Thankfully she pointed it out, but I noticed it then. Hopefully I would have noticed it at least a little, even if they hadn't pointed it out. But just like, that wasn't very nice, that wasn't very wise, and it hurt a little, as it should. And so we want to be grateful because there's some continuity, momentum, whatever, of awareness, present moment awareness. Then we get to take advantage of moral sensitivity. And if there's not any present moment awareness, it doesn't matter if your heart's sensitive, because nobody's paying attention. There's no learning from that sensitivity. We're just, the heart in a way is saying, hey, the way you're relating right now, it hurts. It's a cause for stress here, probably a cause for stress out there. But if that awareness, that's what awareness is, it's aware of what's being felt. And we humans, maybe other animals to a lesser degree, who knows, but we humans for sure have this capacity to be aware of that moral sensitivity. And so we're practicing together, we're practicing at home alone, or maybe we practice with other people there too, but we're studying, we're gathering on Monday nights, or if you're busy with work or family stuff, you can always watch the program later, because it will be there on our YouTube channel. Pretty much immediately after Monday night, you can watch it. And This is important. Every other Monday, the 2nd week, the 4th week, the 6th week, and the 8th week of this class, the last 20 minutes or so will break up into small groups, and you'll meet in groups of 3 or 4, and you'll check in about what you're learning. And of course, it's always okay to pass in those small groups, but what's not okay is to be part of this and then to sneak away when it's time for the small groups. So if you're going to do the Buddhist studies, that means you're going to show up in these small groups. And we're all responsible for creating a little or a big sacred space for that group of 3 or 4 folks to sit together on Zoom or here in the room, in the building, and to give each person a couple minutes to speak directly from their own experience, which might be a lot of confusion, or a lot of shame, or a lot of clarity, a lot of learning, or whatever it is. Just one big, hairy question, right, that the person might put out. That'd be fine. And the other people in the group at that time, they're taking full responsibility to listen, to really be in the experience of the moment, in the experience of their body. Because when we're intimate with our body, we're also going to be intimate with hearing and intimate with the comprehension of whatever the person is saying as best we can. Intimate with just that energetic empathy, like feeling what we're feeling, listening to that person, meeting them as best we can. That's a real gift. So we hear from each person, and then for the 5 or 7 minutes that are left, usually, just an open conversation with the 3 or 4 folks until the time's up. So second, 4th, 6th, and 8th week, we use the last 20 minutes for those small groups. And so just be aware of that, and be aware like, oh, I really feel dead to the world, I don't want to go. Well, that's okay to not want to go. Just go, knowing that that's how you feel. And you can even say that when it's your turn to share. I really don't want to be there. It's all about learning how to be real. Because what we're doing in the bigger groups, but especially in the smaller groups, is we're normalizing what it's like to be a human being with a conditioned mind. Like conditioned not to want to be in a small group, because that's how you were conditioned, or whatever your response is in that situation. And just to kind of model being present even as we're speaking and sharing with everything that's moving in our heart. And you can even speak to that when you're sharing in that kind of real-time way. So that's an important part of the Buddhist studies, as is the study component. So in the email that I'll send out tomorrow, we're updating the Google group with all the people who registered for this. A lot of you have already been registered and are already in that Buddhist studies email group. But it's how we communicate with each other. You can always opt out, unsubscribe, and but I'll have resources that you can listen to or read to help deepen your understanding of the Buddhist teachings on this topic of moral sensitivity, moral integrity. So do at least a little, and for those of you with more time, do a lot. And the purpose of study isn't to, like how much you read. It might be you read a paragraph, and then you put the article or the book down, and you look directly at your experience right then and there. And then you might read a little bit more. So it's really using the information you get from study to illuminate our experience. And mostly what we'll be illuminating is this world of morality, which I know is a word that unfortunately we've been conditioned to sort of always think that there's this uber parent wagging their finger telling us that's not what you're supposed to do. But the way the Buddhism and the Buddhist teachings are, the whole area, this whole part of spiritual life, you could say a third of spiritual life is appreciating developing and appreciating this moral sensitivity. And it's about curiosity, right? The whole point of us talking, like we're going to talk about the subject this summer, is to activate more and more curiosity. Because it's sort of like the 3/3 of spiritual life. They're just our existence at different frequency, relatively gross level of our human existence, sort of middling degree of subtlety, not too subtle, not too gross, and the more subtle. So Sila, which has a lot to do with how we relate in this outer way, but that includes how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to each other and how we relate to things, right? So that's a relatively gross part of what it is to be a human being. And how we relate to our mind, the sort of more gross level of the mind, the activity of our mind, you could even say the thinking mind, that's 1/3 of the practice. 1/3 we call samadhi, just so for those of you who know that word. And then there's even the more subtle, which we'd call panya, wisdom, or view, or understanding. So there's that 1/3. So Sila is the grossest part, but that doesn't mean it's the easy part, or even I don't think it's quite right to say the foundational part, which you do hear sometimes in Buddhism. There's a story from Ajahn Chah, who's a great Thai meditation master, that I guess some Westerner asked him, you seem to be teaching a lot about meditation and wisdom, this more subtle 1/3 of the practice, of the path, to the Westerners. How come you don't talk about Sila, moral conduct? And Ajahn Chah, this wise teacher, said, well, clearly no one's going to make any progress if they ignore this 1/3 of the practice or the path, but I'd rather them figure that out for themselves. Maybe he had some sense, the people, especially whenever it was in the mid-60s and Westerners started to show up at the monastery where he was teaching in northeast Thailand, maybe he just had a sense that if he began with, teachings on non-harming and observing your speech and how you consume and things like that, it would just activate this sort of part of, especially people who got themselves to Asia, maybe they were the more rebellious types who didn't want another parent telling them what to do, right? They wanted some wise guy telling them that, hey, you could be free. And that got their interest, and that was sort of the end. But then, as practice develops, we start bumping up against a wall, because we haven't gotten interested in this 1/3 of our human existence, which is we're in relationship together. Even if you live in a cave all alone, you're still in relationship with the conditioning of your own mind and the experience of your own body and the walls of the cave and the spiders and the bats and whatever else. You're in relationship with all of that stuff. There's no place where we can be where we're not in a relational world. It can't be ignored. And trying to ignore it means planting seeds for stress and suffering. And we generally learn the hard way, because it's messier stuff. This area of Sila, the relational aspect of the path. But in a way, it's a place where we can build a lot of confidence. That I mentioned briefly in the guided sit, that we are not helpless. Like this whole, it almost seems like we shouldn't say it, but maybe it's a nice thing. Maybe I'll add this to the homework. I'll try to remember. Maybe I'll even write it down so I don't forget tomorrow when I put it in the email. Resolve with confidence to be happy. Like not to be ashamed to want to be happy. I want to be happy. Like just forget about emptiness. From this very personal point of view, I really want to be a happy human being. I don't want to hurt. And I really don't want to make other people hurt. There seems to be enough pain, emotional, physical, mental pain. And because it seems like, do I have permission? Does it make sense to want to be a happy human being? Is there does that violate some sort of law? Like we can't ask for what we want. And maybe it would be good with that ask, like I really want to be happy, to add, and this may take some practice, and to be truthful, this is the second part, to be truthful, I'm not even sure what that would look like. I'm pretty sure I'll know when I get there, but I have some humility about that I might not be able to imagine even what that's like. But I'm interested. And generally, as we are a sincere, interested human being, interested in this happiness project, we do develop some intuition about the flavor and nature of that happiness. The Buddha, we have words, but the words are only so-so. They're not really going to help too much. Like one word is an unconditional happiness. The happiness of the cessation of craving, no dependence. The heart that is free to give because it's not dependent on getting, so that heart is free to be generous, generously present, generously responsive. So we aspire to be happy, and that really, we can't in a powerful way aspire to be happy unless we have this beginning insight and intuition that happiness is available, and it depends on understanding the conditional nature, like the lawful nature. And it really gets distilled, we get this teaching from the Buddha, but this is not, I'm guessing, have all begun this insight that how my mind is relating, the quality of the intention or motivation really matters. And in the Buddhist teachings, he's very clear that, like, how it is for me right now, the pain in my body, the conditions, the circumstances around me, the way the world is right now, the weather, all of that, those conditions, they are arising lawfully from past causes. So I can't really do anything about the war right now, in this moment, the war in Ukraine, or the way my mood is, the pain in my knee, who's in the room with me. Because it's naturally, unavoidably the expression of all those past conditions. But how I'm relating, how I'm understanding, the kind of meaning I'm making up around these conditions that are here, that's laying down another impression. That's setting something in motion. So when we talk about moral sensitivity, we're not looking at how much pain I'm experiencing right now. We're looking at how's the mind relating. What is the mind setting in motion by how it's relating? What's relevant now isn't what's showing up. What's relevant now is how the heart is relating. It's always about this relational world. And the gross level of relating is just how is the mind relating to sense experience? And this interaction and this relationship with traffic and this relationship with the food in front of me and this relationship with the computer and scrolling through the internet. How's the mind relating? Is it desperate, acting out of some sense of lack, desperate for something interesting or pleasant to remove temporarily the feeling of lack? Oh, well, what does that acting out of that sense of lack and the motivation, the somewhat desperate motivation, to find something interesting so I remove that sense of lack for a few moments, find a good TV show or whatever it is. What does that leave behind in the heart, in the mind stream? What impression? What does that set in motion? Is it helpful or unhelpful, skillful or unskillful? A cause for stress or cause for release? That is a morally sensitive human being, someone who's interested in that. And it isn't something that we figure out cognitively. It's something that we figure out by learning how to trust and feel the experience of remorse. I mean, isn't it like if we binge watch something? You know, I know this feeling very clearly, like you watched a couple shows, it's a relatively good show, you're happy that, you know, it's relatively wholesome and it's fun to watch. And you watch 2 episodes, you know, one, it was very satisfying, think, oh, I've got time to watch. And then it's like, there's this calculation in my 4 more episodes. It's already a little stressful, like liking it now, it's still kind of good, but there's now a dependence on it. And the heart, this is, I'm just talking from my own experience, my heart wants to be done with the dependence. Maybe I'll just watch it all, so I can put down the load of needing to watch it all. So just finish it and be done with it. Anybody? Some of you are smiling, so you know this. It's really good to be honest. Like I was saying to Wynn earlier today, you know, that, not that we could actually do this, but it would be very interesting to say, those of you on Zoom and those in the room, you know, maybe with a piece of paper, everybody has to write down the most egregious, outrageous moral lapse of your life. You know, where you really did something bad or are doing something bad. Maybe it's current. And then like show and tell. And like then notice like, oh, I would not want to tell you what I looked at on the internet. You know? It's like, I don't want to talk about that. And like, what's that feeling? That moral shame, let's call it, or regret. Like we get sometimes if we do watch 6 episodes in a row, and then it's like we notice how we've trashed our mind for a while, right? It's just like not good for anything. And we feel that yucky, like, that was not good, what I just did. Or we overeat, or, you know, any number of, drink too much, say something stupid, or something insensitive to somebody. And then there's that. So that's moral sensitivity. It's related to moral sensitivity, but it's like, it's a very powerful medicine, and we have to learn how to use that natural, useful feeling of regret. Even just using that word shame can kind of help attune to that experience. Because it's very easy, as I'm sure you sense, to turn it into judgment and self-hatred. But how can we use it like, I'm so happy to be able to be aware that when the mind relates like this, then there's this feeling. oh, it's like, that means I get to know cause and effect. I'm not driving without being able to see. I get to participate in this world of karma, cause and effect. And then it's like when we really start to trust it, then it becomes more and more easy to restrain ourselves from doing something that we've done 10,000 times before and didn't deliver the goods. And then it's like, I could do this, but I know where this goes, so I'm not going to do it. And it's like, we feel so good about being able to take care of ourselves in that way. I'm sure, and this would be something really great to share next week in the small groups. It's like those places where you have confidence, you're appreciative, like you could call that, as Ajahn Amaro I think did in one of his books, like grateful for the breaks, the power to be able to refrain or restrain ourselves from saying something that we sense shouldn't be said, or even thinking something we're pretty sure doesn't need to be thought, or whatever it might be. Let me just check in with the people on Zoom. Is the sound okay? Yeah? Okay, good. So a couple other things to keep in mind for the small groups next week. Just in terms of homework, we're going to take the last 20 minutes to review the 5 precepts. We'll do them. And I've put that into the chat. I'll do that again right now so folks can have that document. And it will be linked to in the email that I'll send out to the whole group tomorrow, so you all have your copy. But one is encouragement is to just make it a daily practice to reflect in your own way. You'll have the traditional recitation, but it's really okay to make it feel right for yourself, but to just, in one way or another, resolve around this commitment of non-harming, like learning to value living a life of not harming yourself or others. And just to evoke more and more curiosity. So it's there when you go shopping, like how do I shop for food and value non-harming myself and others? How do I hang out with my friends at the bar and really value not harming myself and others? How do I drive in traffic, valuing not harming myself and others? How do I get involved in this social political activism without harming myself and others? How do I have sex or have a sexual relationship without harming myself and others? In all the other arenas, how do I have power in, institutional power at work, or cultural power because of a color of our skin, or the class we inhabit, or the gender, or whatever, sexual orientation? How do we use power in a way that doesn't harm myself or others? Or privilege? That's kind of interesting stuff. And remember, I'm framing it that way, or the Buddha frames it that way, so it shouldn't be easy. We should get a lot of red flags if during the course this summer, we're using the material to beat ourselves up, to feel bad about ourselves, because we're a bad human being. We do bad stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, it should be a cause for curiosity. Well, this is interesting. I really want to hit this person. I'm not gonna, but I really want to hit them. I want something bad to happen to them. Or I did say something with the intention to hurt them. I actually not only thought, but I acted on the thought and I let loose a zinger. Of course, we would disguise it. Carol Wilson, I was just teaching at Spirit Rock with one of our elders in our Insight Meditation community here in the States. And Carol teaches a lot in Europe as well, but she just gave this really funny rant on, the habit of people on these, 9-day retreats or longer retreats, when people get really sensitive and we all start to irritate each other. Someone's breathing too loud in the meditation hall or something like that. And so people will then write a note, and they don't know your name, so they'll just leave it on your cushion, you're breathing really loud. And they always sign it metta, which, if you don't know, just means loving kindness. But it's not metta. It's like, your breathing is bothering me. I find it really insulting. Like you're doing it on purpose or something like that. Metta. And so we disguise our little jabs and pokes all kinds of ways. I mean, I'm looking at my partner because I see that in our relationship. Luckily, we're both practitioners, and to some degree, not perfectly, there's a little bit of an awareness. We still do it, or I do it, but there's a little awareness that I'm doing it while I'm doing it. We're poking, pushing. I learned it. I blame my parents, or my mom especially, because she had this sort of way of teasing and pointing out things, and it's sort of like partly a game, but also, and I think it may be just endemic to creatures that are social, where they're always sort of clarifying how power works in this interaction by just seeing, who has power, where the power is, like who's on top, who's not on top. So we kind of just checking where the emotional vulnerabilities are, how this person has needs in this moment, or how I have needs in this moment, how I can disguise my needs, remain oblivious, and pretend I have no needs, like the need to dominate. All these ways of subtly or not so subtly causing harm for ourselves and others. It should be a cause for real curiosity to start mapping this out and learning how to listen with a lot of appreciation that there is this morally sensitive heart that feels every intention, the quality of every motivation has a feeling. It lays down. It is a cause for the arising of a feeling tone. Oh, it feels like this. And there's just very naturally, just like we feel stupid when we hit ourselves with the hammer, hit our thumb or something, when we act in an unskillful way, but it's seen with some clarity, it also, there's that, wow, I can't believe I did this. This really doesn't help. Please don't do that again. Right? The learning is so natural when it's illuminated by present moment awareness. I want to be a better partner when I notice something I said that felt off. Like, I don't know if Wynn noticed it, but then later, I went over and tried to express some tenderness. Did you notice? Do you remember? I don't need you to remember when I was giving you that little neck. That's because what I said earlier. Remember that you pointed out to me? You don't remember? No, but it's really good to, I don't think there is any interaction that is free of this kind of stuff, we're constantly throwing somebody out of our heart in little and big ways by just like being more interested in our phone than them, right? And we're constantly trying to get something from somebody that they may not want to give. I notice this a lot, just in terms of taking something that isn't being offered, just about attraction, sexual attraction, and just like, what am I? I want to look at this, and what's that like? What's that like? Like, what impression does that lay down in my mind? And who do I become? Like, what gets set in motion? And it's not something to be afraid of because, in different ways, we're all sexual beings. And so that's going to be very alive, even when we get old. For better or worse, it's there. So this is the thing about this whole area of Sila. Are we willing to illuminate it with awareness? Or do we think the strategy for happiness is just to wish it away? Like, pretend that how I'm aware, how I'm showing up, how I'm relating, how I'm expressing the conditioned habits that I picked up through culture, just assuming that that's just how it is. I'm a white male conditioned by early 1960s television, and people are just going to have to deal with it. And it's okay to try that because we are going to try that, but we really have an incentive to want to know how that's working for us and for others. How's that working? What does the heart receive from that? And nobody, by the way, is exempt. Those of you who are younger and picked up a different set of conditioning, as self-righteous as the older generations or younger generations might be, my guess is it's all off. Culture is just, it's sort of like the lowest denominator in terms of, the general cultural forces tend to be revolving around greed, hatred, and delusion. It changes, of course, the particular way those forces are expressed, but it doesn't seem obvious that, older is worse and newer forms are better. It just seems like different expressions of the same old, greed, hatred, and delusion. So, resolving, like I mentioned, so just again reviewing the homework, like practice fearlessly resolving to want to be a happy human being, and in doing that, to realize I have this potential to become more morally sensitive, to navigate my way, to learn what's helpful and unhelpful. It's not enough just to resolve to be happy, but connecting that deep wish to be happy with a sense of responsibility, like of empowerment. I can do it. I can start paying attention. Like how being stingy doesn't help. How being more generous in a way that feels safe and appropriate really helps. Leads to happiness. Being able to refrain from doing stuff that doesn't seem to help is empowering, is a cause for joy. Feeling a victim to my habit energy is a cause for depression, right? Doing the same thing, getting the same results, even though I said to myself, I'm never going to do that again. And there I do it again. Okay, so is it that I'm just destined to act out this unhelpful habit forever? Or is there actually the possibility of being interested in it enough to unpack the supporting causes. Like, what is it that the mind isn't seeing and isn't feeling that leads the mind, the heart, to do this action that is so stressful? What would the mind need to feel and see more clearly that would lead to a different response in this situation? What am I not seeing that if I did see and feel that, I wouldn't do that thing? What do I need to bring to mind? Okay, let me try to resolve to bring that to mind the next time I notice I'm inclined to do this thing. To spend my time in this way that I have deep confidence isn't a cause for my well-being, isn't the cause for other people's well-being, isn't the cause for anybody's well-being. What do I need to bring to mind? So this is a place that you can explore these 8 weeks. Just take some of those places where you already have some clarity this isn't helpful. Instead of it going immediately to some sense of helplessness and judgment and self-hatred, just this more enlivened, empowered, this can be figured out, not by thinking, but this more careful observation of what the mind habitually chooses not to be aware of and what the mind chooses to be aware of. Like, whatever your habit energy might be, to overeat, to watch too much media, to drink too much, to gossip too much, to, whatever it might be. What is the mind attending to? Like, how does that justification work? Because the mind is capable of making stuff up, these rationalizations. And so we can get very familiar, this is how the mind paints a picture that makes it seem okay that I'm going to do this thing. And this is what the mind is strategically not remembering, not bringing to mind. And when we do that, even in hindsight, when that strong remorse is more poignant, where we're really feeling more sincerely like, I really need to find a way to stop doing this, acting out this addiction, let's say, then get clear about, not that you're going to have perfect clarity, but what do I need to see and what am I seeing instead? Because we always assume that when I'm perceiving the moment, that I'm perceiving accurately, but we're making it up. We're constructing reality. So when it makes sense to watch the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th episode, we're making something up. Whatever it is, like it's just too hard to get up and shut the computer off. I actually have to get up out of my seat, And now, you know how it is with these streaming services, it just goes right to the next episode. How convenient. So, what do I need to see? Like, this is the one thing about not having advertisements, where you can actually check and have a sense, like, how am I doing? Oh, I'm not doing good. So we want to resolve to be happy. We want to learn more how to access the sensitivity, this moral sensitivity, and kind of play with particular places. Like for some of you, it might be in traffic, like how to be a morally sensitive being. Because it's like there's 2 allegiances. Either we're going to have more be in allegiance with our animal nature, which we all have, of course, because we're animals. And animal nature, by that I mean, I just want to survive. I just want to hide from danger and threats. I just want to be on the top of the heap. I just want to get what I want, have what I want. So we're either doing that, we're acting out of that point of view, or there's a spiritual point of view we can be living our life through. And it animates our, kind of provides our motivations and energy to sort of choose and act and respond. And you could call this, like in terms of our course this summer, the intention, the motivation to harmonize. It's a nice, I like that word, and you can use that all 8 weeks long and then forever. So let's say traffic is one of those places that's of interest to you. So how can I be a moral being, driving my car, my bicycle, my whatever, and intentionally be interested in harmonizing with everything, harmonizing with my own emotional states, my own mood, my own body, my bike, my car, the people on the highway with me, everything, the totality of the moment. Like that mutuality, I care, I'm in relationship and therefore sensitive and therefore caring about everything. And caring about my well-being doesn't mean I have to exclude caring about your well-being. Part of the intention to harmonize is somehow taking care of your well-being and taking care of my well-being and everyone's well-being. They're not like different ways of operating in the moment. That it all can be, that we can harmonize all of those intentions and how we move through space, move through the moment, move through the day, this business meeting, cooking dinner for the family or your people you live with, or having an interaction with your partner, or whatever it might be. Like a little mindfulness bell can go off. So, oh yeah, I'm taking this course this summer. It's all about Sila, moral sensitivity, valuing this harmonization, like caring about everything, as opposed to trying to get, or even if we're in a business relationship, okay, we both have our agendas, so let's connect together and see if we can work together. So you help me get what I want, and I hope you get what you want. But that's not really there yet at that more spiritual motivation to harmonize. It's maybe a step in the direction, like realizing, hey, we're in this together, so let's work together. Because that intention to harmonize is really coming from this intention of generosity. In this way, in the Buddhist tradition, Sila is considered like a beautiful expression of generosity. We're giving ourselves and the whole world the gift of non-fear and the gift of trust. You don't have to be afraid of me because I deeply value non-harming. And that's the vibe. We feel that sometimes when we're meeting somebody or just spending some time around somebody that we don't know well. But after a few moments of interacting, we get a sense like, I totally trust this person. And I think what we mean by that is we sense this person has developed some real momentum around their practice of Sila. And it's not that they're a Buddhist, of course, because this isn't specific to any kind of training. It's just specific to somebody realizing, like in English we'd call it conscience. They've developed their conscience. Oh yeah, I don't want to feel bad after I'm done with this interaction, because it feels bad when I feel bad. It hurts. So, and that, it's like the heart, that moral sensitivity is what leads us onward to becoming more happy. And it isn't that, it doesn't happen because we try to be good. It happens because we're willing to feel, recognize and feel moral sensitivity. That's what changes us. And it's, it's not fortunate, but, if we're able to be oblivious, we call these people like, they had a I think it was in the DSM manual, this kind of manual that psychologists use to diagnose mental health issues, conduct disorder, where somebody has been able to very effectively bury their moral sensitivity. It's not that someone does that personally, but through causes and conditions, the conditioning processes in that person's life, it's not very easy for them to feel and listen to their moral sensitivity. And those people can do terribly bad stuff and not really correct or notice even that it's bad because they're disconnected. And this is the thing about different strategies of disconnection. It makes a lot of sense, at least initially when we're in a lot of pain, to close down, because we're in a lot of pain and we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to be with it skillfully. But the thing about the way our heart and mind works, we can't just say, I'm closing this part off. When we turn away from what we're feeling, from what's here, we basically turn away from sensitivity. We unconsciously mostly choose numbness and disconnection. So part of what allows us to become morally sensitive beings is we have to be willing to feel what we feel, be willing to be sensitive. And it's like we get ourselves, you hear this sometimes, and it's not just in terms of Buddhist practice, but just generally spiritual practice, like it becomes a narrow path, being a spiritual being, because we become more and more sensitive, and as we become more sensitive, it's like a lot of our habit energies don't work for us anymore because we can't tolerate being inappropriate, being a jerk, being greedy, acting out in this way and that way, and we don't really have new habits. All we feel sometimes is that all my habits don't feel appropriate anymore, and I don't even know how to be. And we can feel like a little trapped. Something is dying, all the ways I used to relate to my life, and something else hasn't come fully into being yet, like new ways, new motivations, new animating forces, like learning how to live my life through kindness, not an imitation, but just being friendly and open and loving and tender and responsive. Not even as a plan, but just because that's what's left when what wasn't working is abandoned. And another practice that I mentioned, I just want to say again, because I think it would be useful, is to, in a way that feels safe, alone, while you're walking or sitting comfortably, bring to mind some of those moral lapses where you did something you're really not happy about, really ashamed about. Bring it to mind, and then see if you can find your way to appreciating that the memory hurts. Like your heart has built this big, powerful monument, like Mount Rushmore, carved into the mountain of your heart. Honey, don't do this. Or when you do this, it feels like this. And it's like the monument is there, the remorse, the yucky feeling when you remember those things you did. Like I think back when I was a junior and senior in high school, and just, getting drunk and interacting with, the people I was attracted to. But, I just like, I'm so glad I'm not a teenager. Just those bumbling attempts to be with another human being, intimate with another human being, and just how easy it is to be oblivious to the other person being a person, a sensitive human being. When I was like probably in the great scheme of things, I didn't do anything really stupid. But still, those memories, it's like, oh my God, I was such an idiot. And so lucky to not have caused more harm. It would have been really easy. And so to bring something like that to mind, and to sort of to use those sort of bigger experiences from our life to get a clearer sense of how moral sensitivity operates. Oh yeah, I don't need to be afraid of that yucky feeling. It's not going to kill me. It's just a beautiful, that's the Pali phrase, as some of you know, hiri ottappa. The Buddha calls them the guardians of the world, right? These monuments carved into our hearts, like, oh yeah. And it's also like, in a more subtle way, when we do something really wise, like we refrain from something where we could have done something stupid. I once drank too much. I wasn't really drunk, but I was affected by the alcohol that I drank. And I was driving by myself after many hours of driving, hiking out of Canyonlands National Park, and then driving for hours, going back to where I was working in Taos, New Mexico at the time. And I picked up and had a couple beers, and I think I'd smoked some pot early in the day. I drove off a road, one of the most difficult highways in the country probably, in southwestern Colorado. I could have so easily killed myself. Luckily the snow was deep, and the car I was driving just went into the, it was a deep ravine, but the snow caught me. And it was just like, I think I probably fell asleep, is what I'm guessing, but you don't know. But just these kind of stupid things, but like that one, it was like, I feel so fortunate to have learned that lesson, and I haven't, I don't do drugs or alcohol. That was way back in 82 or 83. And just to kind of appreciate the power of these sort of mistakes. Like, we can't avoid making mistakes, but we can turn them into solid gold by regurgitating them, noticing the feeling there, distilling the lesson, making that monument so we don't have to do it again. It's like there's so many great poems about, that's like one line I'm remembering, Persia Gertner, I think is the poet, the hieroglyphics. I don't know if they're etched into the heart. The line is something like that, just the sort of messiness and painfulness of life. How can we distill the learning so we really take advantage of all the little and big ways we've caused harm? And the last thing, just in terms of the study, is just to have a sense of the joy, the lightness, this non-fear and the trustworthiness of this earthy wisdom. Sila is the most earthy form of wisdom. And to kind of like, yeah, I know how to handle myself because my heart is sensitive. It's got radar. So when I'm about to do something stupid that will cause me and others harm, it's going to start saying something, throwing some red flags out, or it's going to feel something. So I'm going to stay, and that's like that earthy being grounded, like we talk a lot about embodiment, but really what we're embodying is the sensitive moral heart. And you can even use the general location as a kind of anchor, so in those places where you're going to be interested in staying attuned to moral sensitivity, like you're going into a meeting that pushes your buttons, or you're going to drive in traffic, but you're just like, okay, I'm going to practice harmonizing with whatever's moving, as if I can be a moral being interested in harmonizing instead of interested in winning, or even interested in surviving. That might seem like more wholesome, but maybe we can aspire to something different, even more beautiful, like harmonizing in a way that's healing all around. My presence, my way of relating, my being here in relationship with the moment is a cause for healing and releasing all around. Whether people notice it or not, we don't need praise. I'm so glad you were there, Mark. You were such a healing presence, right? We don't, because the effect, the direct effect itself is the reward. It just, cleanliness may not resonate with you. There's probably better words, but there's this absence of remorse. The Buddha calls it the bliss of blamelessness. So look for that lightness. It's a real happiness. It's a real joy. Where in your life, when you're doing something, finishing something, can you detect that bliss of blamelessness, that lightness, that powerful trust in the goodness and the earthy wisdom of your own heart? Oh, I can trust that my heart isn't going to do something stupid in this kind of situation. This other situation, I'm not yet able to trust my heart, because it's still, I know the conditioning, the forces that are at play. Those habits are not personal, but they're real, to act out in this way or that way. So it can get clunky, like around sexual attraction, which we'll talk about later in the course. But there are some places where, no, it's going to be a little awkward, because I have a lot of respect for the force of sexual attraction. So I'm going to treat it with respect. I wish I could be completely know that I'm not going to do something stupid. But I want to make sure I don't do anything stupid. So I'm going to be careful. Even if I have to kind of get tight, I know I'm not going to look over there. It seems a little well, that's a little tight. It's just something that the heart finds beautiful. Why are you afraid, Mark? But just I understand, I've observed the forces in the mind, not personal, but real. So I'm going to be careful about that. So I look forward to our weeks together. We didn't have time to do the precepts, but it's maybe even better not to do the formal recitation, so that those of you who are not used to the formal recitation won't get put off by the kind of ceremonial or the formal quality of that recitation. But you'll get the email tomorrow. Those of you online have it in the chat. And just use the words and try to see how you might use that commitment to non-harming, to not taking what hasn't been given, to refraining from any sexual activity that causes myself or others harm, speaking in ways that cause myself or others harm, consuming, especially consuming intoxicants, which I would include media in that category, drugs, alcohol, media, in ways that cause harm for myself and others. Those are just illuminating, those 5 precepts are just illuminating the places where we can begin to cultivate this moral sensitivity. See where it leads. So wishing us all a good week of practice. Remember, you can always send me questions I'll weave them into the talks and discussions in the weeks ahead. So you'll all have my email address because you're going to receive and have already and will receive emails from me through our Buddhist Studies email list. So thanks everyone for being here, and wishing you a good week of practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.